In May 2017, Real Madrid agreed to sign Vinicius Jr. for a reported fee of €45 million, a record transfer for a player under 18. The deal stipulated that he would remain at Flamengo until he turned 18 in July 2018. Vinícius joined Flamengo's youth academy in 2010, when he was just 10 years old. He made his professional debut for Flamengo on May 13, 2017, at the age of 16, in a Brazilian Serie A match against Atlético Mineiro. According to experts, it was after this match that Real Madrid decided to sign this young boy. At the time, almost no one in the country thought he was good enough. He wasn't even considered fit to play for Flamengo, much less for Real Madrid. This brings up the question, why was he signed by Real Madrid? When Vinicius Jr. was signed by Real Madrid from Flamengo, the Brazilian public believed that Real had been tricked. Some even called it the biggest football heist in history. When the contracts were signed, Vinicius had only appeared in one Flamengo game, and it wasn't a particularly good one. Real Madrid made a €45 million decision based on just 13 seconds of excellent play, disregarding the fact that he mishandled the ball every time he touched it. They made him the most expensive underage player in history based on just 13 seconds of action. It sounds crazy, right? Yet, that's precisely what happened when Real Madrid decided to sign Vinicius Jr. from Flamengo. Despite his limited time on the pitch, those 13 seconds were enough to convince the Spanish giants to splash out €45 million, a record-breaking fee for a player so young. But the question remains, if his debut was marred by mistakes, with every touch of the ball seeming to go wrong, what did Real Madrid see in those few seconds that was extraordinary? The answer is that they saw potential, raw talent, and a future star. There's an explanation. Vinicius was always supposed to end up at Barcelona. Vinicius was crazy about video games and football while growing up. He loved playing in FIFA, and the FC Barcelona squad was his favorite, with Lionel Messi being his go-to player. When he was 9 years old, his parents enrolled him at Flamengo Academy because they wanted him to play football in school. He had potential, and the academy saw it, but advised him to return the following year when his age would not be an issue. However, he could not wait any longer, so he made the decision to forego playing football and opt for futsal instead. His parents persuaded him that futsal was not the best sport for him because they thought he would have a better future playing football. Vinicius's journey toward becoming an international sensation began with his enrollment in this academy, but his family had to work harder during his early years at Flamengo since they knew it was a crucial time in his life and needed more money for his upkeep. Everyone believed that Vinicius would have a great future, so his parents had to make significant financial sacrifices in order to pay for the academy. This was a difficult period for them, but Vinicius was their priority. Vinicius declared on his application that he was a left-back when he signed up with Flamengo, although this was untrue. However, it did not take long for it to become clear that he was an attacker rather than a left-back as had previously been suggested. This was made clear when he single-handedly led the front line of his team to his first youth title medal. Vinicius received not only the Player of the Tournament honor, but also the Golden Boot. Flamengo kept telling him to take things easy, follow in Neymar's footsteps, and stay in Brazil for a while. There was no stopping him. The next summer he joined Brazil for the Under-15 South American Championship, and after scoring 6 goals and providing 5 assists in just 5 games, not only were they champions, but European scouts were swarming around him like vultures. Then, having only just turned 16, Vinicius led his team to the Under-17 Carioca, defeating Vasco 10-1 in the final. He then joined the Under-18s for the prestigious Copinha and outshined everyone, leading Barcelona to go all in for his signing, offering Flamengo the $30 million defined in his release clause. Go read any newspaper from back in the day, and they were all claiming Vinicius was already a Barcelona player. Even his old agent went on to tell the press that Vini was a massive Barcelona fan and that he had cried watching their comeback against PSG. Vinicius received an invitation to represent Brazil at the South American U17 Championship in March of the same year, and after this tournament, everything changed. He made a reputation for himself in South America by helping Brazil win the competition for a record 12th time with 7 goals. The Best Player award even went to Vinicius. Additionally, he was able to perform 3 opposed quickly one after the other during a match between Brazil and Paraguay. Chapeau became really popular after the game. For those who don't know, chapeau is a humiliating tactic in which a player flips the ball over an opponent's head. Robinho was the first performer he had ever seen do this move, and it fascinated him with how expertly he could execute it. Vinícius quickly piqued the interest of prominent European clubs as he continued to perform admirably on the field. By the end, the three biggest newspapers in Spain were talking up how Barcelona had already secured the transfer of the next Neymar. Real Madrid weren't about to make the same mistake again. If once they had allowed Neymar to slip through their fingers and into the Camp Nou, this time, they sought revenge. The message was simple. Whatever Barcelona is willing to pay, we will pay more. So, when he debuted for the first team a couple of weeks later, and it turned out to be a disaster, it wasn't that they were excusing his performance on the basis that he was still only 16. They were just hyper-focused on beating Barcelona to his signing. They even got Flamengo to renew Vini's contract just so they could increase his release clause, allowing Real to outbid Barcelona. When the move was announced, everyone's jaws dropped. 45 million for an unproven, unknown 16-year-old. Only two Brazilians had ever commanded that much money, Neymar and Kaká. Now, in the eyes of the public, he had no choice but to perform as well as them. But that just didn't happen. 3 more substitute appearances came and went without impact. Then, they tried putting him in the starting 11, which only attracted more attention to the fact that things were going wrong. Suddenly, even Mundo Deportivo was reporting that Real Madrid's 45 million euro man kept disappointing. 5 matches later, Vinícius was already being dropped, and just 2 months later, he hit the lowest moment of his career, being subbed in the 75th minute, only to be subbed out before the game was over, becoming the biggest joke in the entire country. The problem was not only that. Despite his big money move, doubts over his attitude were not completely erased. One of his last matches in Brazil, wearing the Flamengo jersey, was against city rivals Botafogo in the Guanabara Cup, when he pulled a crybaby celebration after scoring with a beautifully curled shot from outside the box to put his side 3-1 up in the Brazilian Clásico. This irritated the opposition players to the point of initiating a scuffle on the pitch, which earned Vini Jr a yellow card. But he was, as it is now very well known, unapologetic. Talking to the media with a big smile on his face after the game, the 17-year-old said that he'd continue to celebrate his goals just as he pleased. It was just a celebration. I didn't want to humiliate anyone, but I didn't intend to change because it's the joy of the goal. Clarence Seedorf himself sounded the alarms on live TV, saying, "He won't even play there. It's a completely different level. With luck, maybe he'll get a loan off to a club like Porto." Even Eto'o didn't perform at Real when he was 18, so he got kicked out. And he wasn't far off. When Vinícius got to Real, not only were the same problems still there, but it seemed the pressure had made it all 10 times worse. In his presentation, he couldn't even do a couple of kick-ups without messing up. When they gave him his debut in a friendly versus United, no matter how much he kept dribbling, there was no end product. So they decided he'd start the season splitting his time between the under-19s and the B team. It took a while for Vini to make an impact at Real Madrid. He had to basically start over from scratch, as he was put on the B team upon his arrival at the hands of former Real Madrid player-turned-coach Santiago Solari. This was supposed to be an orientation period, where Vini would understand the magnitude of the club, the weight of its legendary white jersey, and the way football is played in Spain. He passed these tests with flying colors. When a 5-1 defeat at Camp Nou saw senior first-team manager Julen Lopetegui fired, Vini Jr.'s way into the first team became all the more achievable. Solari was appointed as interim manager, and he took the Brazilian alongside him into the senior team without missing a beat. Even though Vini made his senior team debut and scored his very first goal for Madrid rather quickly, a major setback was closing in. The appointment of Zinedine Zidane as manager and the transfer of Eden Hazard. Zidane, since he was almost the sole reason for Hazard's arrival in Madrid, wanted things to work out for him, and that clearly meant putting Hazard ahead of Vini Jr in the pecking order. The Brazilian was at best displaced from his favorite position on the field in favor of the Belgian, or at worst, warming the bench. The criticism aimed at his playstyle was also back, most likely because he was trying to prove himself to his new coach. The Brazilian wanted to do so many things and often failed at most of them. He was counterproductive, dribbling just for the heck of it and depriving his teammates of crucial opportunities to score. When he was back in Brazil, it was his opponents and the opposition fans who grew a distaste for his play style. Now, even his own teammates had had enough of it. The worst example happened in the UEFA Champions League when Real Madrid faced Borussia Mönchengladbach. The Spanish Giants were 1-0 down after 45 minutes, and just before the teams took to the field for the second half, a visibly irritated Karim Benzema was caught on camera talking to his compatriot and teammate Ferland Mendy. The following month saw Benzema and Vini Jr. reconcile. Eden Hazard's terrible form and injury record would provide the Brazilian countless opportunities to play too. But even in his best season under Zinedine Zidane, Vini Jr.'s total goal contributions never became eye-popping. Scoring 6 goals and providing 7 assists over the course of 50 games was his very best, and by all accounts he was underperforming. As we all know now, this was about to change thanks to the arrival of Don Carlo. Vini's success, coupled with his daring play style and provocative nature, had turned him into a prime target both on and off the pitch. By this point, the Brazilian was subjected to racist abuse multiple times in Spain. Pedro Bravo, president of the Spanish Agents Association, had once publicly asked Vini Jr. to stop playing the monkey, referring to the Brazilian dance moves which he displayed after scoring. Despite it taking place on national television, the moment didn't create as big a scene in Spain as it should have. But Vini Jr. received support from fellow Brazilians, including football legend Pelé. The hate was too much for a 19-year-old kid. Despite all, he became the 3rd youngest Real Madrid player to ever debut in the Champions League and even got an assist. By December, he was playing in the Club World Cup final. By the start of the next year, they made him the youngest regular starter in the history of the club, and before you knew it, Brazil was calling him up. Vini Jr. was going to get better, and the attacks against him were going to get worse. Since Carlo Ancelotti unlocked him, Vini Jr. was no longer the wasteful wunderkind, but the most devastating attacker in European football. This was going to put him in a world of trouble, though. Fans who saw their sides get ripped to shreds week in and week out by Vini Jr. grew to hate him. As for his rivals on the pitch, they were becoming increasingly violent. The Brazilian's ability to change direction on a dime and his deep repertoire of tricks often left defenders with no choice but to foul him. Then again, not every foul came at the end of a dribbling attempt made by the Brazilian. Some were clearly part of an effort to intimidate and hopefully silence him. Just as it seemed he had finally proven everyone wrong and could catch a break, he ruptured the ligaments in his ankle and was gone for months. This really messed him up. Recovery wasn't easy. Suddenly, Vini was performing worse than ever. The fans were booing him. After 8 months without scoring, he literally fell on his knees, crying his eyes out when he finally found the net. By then, the memes had reached Spain. It was no longer just the Brazilian commentators claiming he never deserved to be called up to the national team, demanding some random guy go in his place. Now, Spanish pundits were coming after him, constantly accusing him of being a diver and a cheat. The worst part was that he had lost the trust of his own teammates. Despite everything, the Brazilian was still doing his best to concentrate on his game. After a win against Espanyol in March 2023, he called out La Liga for the unfair treatment he was receiving, but kept things related to football. When the others foul, they don't get a yellow card. When I do the first one, yellow for me. I don't want them to protect me. I want them to whistle what it is. Vini Jr. was being shown yellow cards not only for his fouls, but also due to his complaints against the referees. For people who focused on his reactions alone, this was yet another reason to dislike Vini Jr., the always whining, spoiled kid. The Brazilian was the most fouled player across Europe's top 5 leagues. The second on the list was his compatriot Neymar, but there was a 20-foul gap between them. When the report was released, on-field violence against Vinícius Jr. was at an all-time high. Even Barcelona legend and manager Xavi Hernandez couldn't stay indifferent. After Valencia defender Gabriel Paulista's horrendous tackle on Vinícius, Xavi said that referees needed to do a better job protecting the Real Madrid attacker. A few months later, in a game against Mallorca, Vinícius Jr. was fouled 10 times, each tackle more violent than the previous one. Vini was the most disliked player at the club, and it soon became clear why. Unlike many, Vini's resolve didn't waver despite 5 years in the spotlight, which might have discouraged anyone else. He continued to work diligently, biding his time until Ancelotti's arrival transformed him. His decision-making dramatically improved, shifting from poor to outstanding. Almost overnight, Vini emerged as one of the top performers globally. Ironically, he and Benzema combined to form the planet's premier attacking partnership. He came on against Manchester City and scored a decisive away goal, helping Real Madrid clinch the match in the last minute. In the final, he scored the only goal of the match, handing Real Madrid la décima cuarta. Not only did he become the youngest South American to ever score in a Champions League final, but he was also the first player under 21 to be involved in 10 Champions League goals in a single season. Vini was the best player in the country, yet unfortunately for them, they hated him for it, but he just kept getting better. From January onwards, he racked up 27 goal contributions in 26 matches, consistently delivering one miraculous performance after another. He scored twice to overcome a 2-goal deficit against Liverpool, ultimately leading his team to a 5-2 victory while being involved in 4 of the goals. Vini himself has admitted that racism is killing his love for football, yet he scored or assisted against every team he faced. He also helped Real Madrid win their 15th Champions League title by scoring a goal in the 83rd minute, and with the fans now starting to chant Vini Ballon d'Or during their matches.